Hello and welcome back to One Trek Mind with me, Raptor.
And me, Michael.
And today we're going through episode 9 of Star Trek Discovery Season 5, Lagrange Point. Quite an action-heavy episode to set up the finale, and as usual we'll just do a quick rundown of the main plot elements here and then go into our opinions. So, the episode starts at Federation HQ, where it's clear that things are pretty tense, and in the middle of this, Saru finally returns to the show and returns back with flowers for Tarina, and he's apparently completely unaware what's been going on all this length of time. An emergency meeting is being held where it's revealed that basically Mol's actions in killing the Primarch in the last episode has kind of got all the other Breen moving, and the Breen that we've heard of previously, Tahal, the one who basically did a Bajor on Rayna's planet, is on her way with the fleet to intercept the Breen dreadnought that Mol has stolen and to steal the technology for herself. So this 2-horse race has now become a 3-horse race. And typically to Star Trek cliche, while the Federation's fleet is on its way, it's not going to arrive in time. So for the time being, Discovery is on her own.
Space is quite large.
The damage that Discovery suffered last episode is basically fixed, apart from the spore drive, where there is some navigation damage, but because of time being of the essence, they push to do a jump before that system is fixed, and they end up almost being sucked into the accretion disk of a black hole. But it's revealed that it's actually 2 black holes. They discover that the object that they're looking for is in a gravitationally stable position between the 2 black holes, which is what is astronomically known as a Lagrange point, hence the name of the episode. Then something that both me and Michael are sure to sort of mention in a minute happens. Discovery discovers the thing they're looking for, spends a few minutes looking at it, and the Breen dreadnought arrives and steals it before Discovery can get to it.
They just tractor beam it right on up. Just scoop it up.
So this sets off the whole point of the episode, which is basically a heist. They need to board the Breen dreadnought and recover the device.
Who doesn't love a good heist?
At the roundtable conference of all of the crew, as they talk about the plan, Burnham tells us what the secret piece of information is that she's learnt, the secret missing clue, and it's apparently a phrase which is build the shape of the one between the many. The plan is to have 2 teams go in. One team is going to be Book and Burnham. They're going to stick a good old transporter beacon onto the device and beam it off the ship, or allow it to be beamed off the ship. Adira and Reese are going to go to the bridge and disable the Breen dreadnought's shields so that they can do the beaming off. Adira volunteers to go because they know the Breen systems and they are basically going to be the hacker for this particular team. Stammers is obviously not happy about Adira volunteering. He's clearly a bit tense about it, which was nice. Obviously, he is kind of the father figure for Adira. So
I like the parents duo of Culber and Stamets for Adira. It's been a cute little arc for the 3 of them over the last like 2 or 3 seasons.
It has. And it's worked. While the away teams are off on their mission, Rayna and Tilly have command of Discovery, and Rayna actually asks Tilly directly to be his first officer, which I thought was particularly nice, and it leads to some interesting conversations later on. The middle of the episode basically goes through the whole heist. They wear Breen suits to board the Breen ship. While they're doing this and sneaking on board, Mol is trying to figure out the device. And we see what happens when they send an obvious lackey to test the key that they have on the device. The lackey basically gets sucked into this bright light and disappears forever.
Maybe they're not dead, but they probably are.
Yes. It's reported that it's some sort of extra-dimensional gateway, which did make me think initially of the Iconians and their gateways, actually. Boarding teams get on board just about, they almost get killed doing so, and they almost get detected by some bream who show up. Some bream? That's a fish. They get... They almost get... Yes, it's a fish. They almost get detected by some breen that show up in the room they've just beamed to, but thanks to some quick nifty linguistics from Burnham, they don't get caught just yet. At Federation HQ, they're trying to diplomatically deal with Tahal and the oncoming fleet, and Saru suggests sending a shuttle to the fleet to try to engage them in a face-to-face conversation, which again, it's obvious that Tarina is not exactly overly happy about the suggestion.
She loves the man. Of course she doesn't want to see him potentially die, which I'm more fearful about than ever.
Indeed. It did seem that throughout this episode they were definitely foreshadowing something terrible happening to Saru. President agrees with Saru's plan. Back on the Dreadnought, Adira and Reese get to the bridge and start doing their job, and Burnham and Book have this nice conversation briefly where Burnham basically tells Book that basically what happened in the library, that she had a conversation with the program, and they basically kind of expose to each other their regrets over how their relationship has ended up, essentially. It's the conversation we kind of knew was probably going to happen at some point.
A bit of an odd place to put it, in my opinion, but at the same time, I'm glad they didn't destroy the pacing in order to do it.
Talking of pacing, Tilly and Rayna have quite a funny conversation on the Bridge of Discovery. Tilly, notices Rayna pacing all the time and not sitting down in the captain's chair, and she just politely suggests to him that maybe he should sit down because the pacing is making people nervous. And Rayna says to her that he picked her to be his first officer because he knew that basically Tilly would be open with him and say stuff, but also that if he was in a trench with her, he wouldn't kill her, but any more warm fuzziness. Basically, it was like, this warm fuzziness thing, let's just don't give me too much of it.
No more.
Tilly gives him a nice grin, which I thought was nice. Which I think they made quite a good combination, actually.
And they do, actually. Their two personalities clash and mesh in a very good way. I didn't fully expect that.
Book and Burnham find a security seal on where they need to go, which they can't get through, and it leads to a fisticuffs with a couple of guards, which becomes a problem later because even though they gain access to the room where they need to go, the Breen find out about the missing guards, and it causes the ship to kind of go on a bit of an alert. Burnham sends Book off to go and cause a distraction while she lowers the force field around the device so that they can beam it off the ship, which results in kind of a funny instance of Book flirting Breen style with another Breen.
I genuinely loved the flirting in that moment. It was genuinely hilarious to me. It was such a D&D move to be like, oh, I don't know how to talk my way out of this. Let me just flirt. And it was working surprisingly well. The other guy was very perceptive. He was just like, yeah, sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Give you a little oil bath.
We then pop off from the ship going on alert briefly because of the missing guards to see Saru and Tarina talk about Saru going off and doing that mission. And again, it's very clear that Tarina is a bit anxious, but she tries to hide it with her Vulcan logic, and Saru just kind of puts her in her place a bit and just points out that he is equally capable of being as logical as any Vulcan, which again, it was a nice conversation between those two. But again, it did add more to the foreshadowing that something terrible is going to happen to Saru.
Especially with the whole, he gives her the flowers saying, it's good luck, it protects people. I'm like, it's unfortunate she didn't get you those flowers because I don't think she's the one who's in need of protection here.
So the plan on the Dreadnought is going wrong because of the missing guards. The Dreadnought has gone on alert. Rayna decides to expose the fact that Discovery is there to Mull in order to surprise them with the fact that they're still alive, which does briefly work, but Mull decides to ignore Rayna's warning about Tahal being on the way, and basically puts the ship to battle stations. Maul then goes straight down to the shuttle bay and captures Book and Burnham before they can get the device off the ship.
Yeah, she definitely called the bluff on the whole Michael is dead thing. She's like, I'm sure.
In order to save everybody, Burnham, through open comms which Rayna can hear, refers to the events of episode 1 to Maul, which also indicates to Rayna what the plan is. The plan is to somehow get Burnham, Book, the device outside of the ship's shuttle bay, the Dreadnought's shuttle bay. Rayna asks Stamets to come up with a plan, and basically Disco comes out firing as a distraction at the Dreadnought. Stamets' plan is to ram Discovery, like episode 1, through the Dreadnought's shuttle bay force field to collapse it, thus making everything get blown out into space, and they can beam Book and Burnham and the device off at that point. And they also can beam Reese and Adira off the bridge at the same time. Reese gets involved in a little bit of fisticuffs to protect Adira.
Adira throws any punches, but Adira does fight back a little bit as well, which I was happy about, because again, I'm like, if you're in Starfleet, that means you did receive at least some combat training, so you should be able to defend yourself a little bit, and they did.
Maul and whoever, it seems like some sort of first officer, realize Discovery is about to ram, and Maul decides to take the action of going through the portal regardless of what might be on the other side. Burnham decides to follow Maul through the portal, leaving Book behind. Discovery does the job, smashes her way through the shuttle bay force field, blows everything into space, gets the crew off, but the device gets pulled out towards the black hole and basically gets torn to pieces, exposing the portal in space. Burnham is lost inside the portal with Maul and the assumed progenitor's technology, leaving Rayna and Discovery to come up with a plan to get them out, and that's where the episode ends. So there was quite a lot of toing and froing here and setting up things for the finale. So let's move on to what we did and didn't like, and let's start with the obvious one that I think we both agree that we didn't like, and that is the slightly contrived setup for this heist.
Yeah, I mean, again, they show up. I'm fine with the setup being like, oh, they're having trouble because the navigation system wasn't fully prepared. I'm like, that's cool. You did set up that the ship was very destroyed and you had a very short time limit, and you did jump that time limit because new information was introduced. That's fine. But when they finally do get themselves free of the accretion disk and they just talk about the thing that they're after, they're just looking at it and they're like, wow, it's right there. I thought it would be bigger. I'm like, shut up and go grab it. Like, what are you doing? And then right after that, they say, oh, there's a warp signature. Okay, how long do we have? They're here right now. It's like, what do you mean they're here right now? It is a pretty well-established Star Trek thing. Like, you can detect someone's warp signature at least minutes ahead of when they actually arrive. So it felt very contrived in that moment to be like, oh, they're here right now. Too late. They're already here. It's like, what do you mean they're already here? I'm sure the explanation the showrunners would give us is, well, they're sitting right next to two black holes, which is messing with everyone's readings. Which I'm like, if you really want to get into it, fine, I guess. But that seems, again, just like a very contrived way of making this happen. So it was just kind of annoying that the setup for the episode was so plainly engineered by the writers and not natural. It didn't feel like a natural occurrence of like, oh, they really did just get bested right there. It's like they clearly could have gotten the tech and zipped away before this was ever a problem, but whatever, we're here now. And I did really like the execution of the heist plan. I thought a majority of the episode was quite good, but yeah, the setup for it, I was like, wow, that was, it was like I was sitting in the writer's room watching them create this event happen.
I like the fact that we got to see the Federation in this episode doing Federation-y things, basically. I think one of the problems that sort of the legacy shows did have on occasion is that we kind of didn't see much of what how the Federation works beyond the flagship of the fleet going off. One of the things I think that the original series movies did really well was that, at least in a few of them, we actually got to see the Federation Council, the President, the Chiefs of Staff, the political structure working, and we got to see that side of it. And yes, I know this is going to bring up the Star Wars fans hating the prequels because they were too political.
I don't think they were too political. I think they were just written badly, personally.
But I think
political, I'm fine with.
I think it's good in a show like Star Trek, where not every problem is solved at the end of a lightsaber or a turbo laser, that we do actually see the Federation trying to diplomatically sort out a problem, not just from Captain Picard doing a Shakespearean speech on the bridge of the Enterprise, but actually also the actual bloody president of the Federation trying to get involved, which is kind of their job. I have to say, it is really weird seeing her as the Federation president when
she was the wife of a Nazi before.
Yeah, the last time me and Michael saw her was in The Man in the High Castle as the wife of a very high-ranking member of the Nazi Party. So it's still very strange seeing her in this. Yeah, I thought that actual heist was good, and you mentioned it was nice to see everyone on the ship actually getting a lot more of the crew getting a chance to do something.
Tilly and Rayner are handling things on the ship, and with, little tidbits from, Linus and other, I'm sure, named characters, but ones that are so minor I don't remember their names, I apologize. But it was also really nice to see Adira and Reese go on the away team and actually do something on the away team. They're not, immediately, put out of commission or captured. They actually do complete their segment of the mission and have their own issues to overcome. Perhaps a little bit less than Michael in book, but just in terms of writing, you kind of have to do that. There has to be a main focus and then your sub-focuses. And it was nice to see a lot of characters get to do something here, whereas Discovery has notoriously been, the Michael show, and in the last season or two, the Michael in book show, and it's I personally like those two characters, but I would really like to see the others do something. I really liked that episode, and I think it was season 4 when I think it was just a Tilly episode where she and her cadets are trying to get off an ice planet, and it was really nice to see someone else get the time to shine and actually have the focus on them for a little bit. So even though the focus was still mostly on Michael in book here, the fact that it took the time to give some others some of that focus, it was really, really nice. It was very refreshing.
If certain Star Trek fans are going to accuse Star Trek Voyager of becoming too much the Janeway and 7 of 9 show in later seasons, I think, to be fair, you could also argue the same about Discovery becoming too much the Michael and Booker show. It's kind of similar. So yeah, I agree with you. It's nice to see in this episode everybody, or at least most people, having a direct role. And even, Stamets and Culber, they have a conversation with Adira trying to settle their obvious nerves about the away mission. It was nice to see them doing the parenting thing again.
It was.
I was a little nervous that Adira was going to end up dead or very injured, at least.
I was too. They set it up to make you think that. I'm glad they didn't, though, because for one, I don't think the character has gotten enough material to warrant a big death like that. It would just feel kind of cheap. And two, I guess just for, socio-political reasons, killing off the only non-binary character on the show would probably not ring super well for a lot of people. So I think they made the right call in creating some tension with it, but not actually doing anything horrible to Adira. I enjoyed the episode. I love a good heist episode or movie. I think that particular genre is just almost an easy A in terms of making it fun and engaging, because you naturally have a ticking clock and tension with how are they going to get this thing. It's always fun to watch them, explain the plan and then watch as the plan naturally falls apart because of unforeseen circumstances. And I liked that this episode wasn't particularly frustrating in that, where it's oh, everything just went horribly wrong, everything is screwed. It's no, it went right and it went wrong. It didn't end exactly in the place I expected it to, so I'm overall pretty happy with the episode. I am, however, a little frustrated that what we were a little worried about has come true, that the progenitors and the progenitor tech will not be revealed until the very, very last episode, and that does make me worried that this last episode is going to have to rush the conclusion. I really think they could have benefited from revealing it here in this episode, and then wrap things up in the next, as opposed to reveal and wrap up in the next. I think it can still be done. Like, they could do the progenitor stuff early on and then have, the second half of the episode be wrap up for the crew and whatever lingering problems there might be. But I am nervous now. I'm like, this is gonna be a little harder to stick the landing here, but I think they stuck the landing decently well in the 4th season with Species 10C, so we'll see.
I am equally nervous. I agree. Leaving the reveal of the progenitors tech, the final confrontation with Mole, and wrapping all of that up, and also giving a satisfying conclusion to the end of the series in one 1-hour episode. We are assuming at this point it's one 1-hour episode, it could be longer, is going to be a tall order, I feel. I am also a little nervous since it's Burnham who went through with Mole, that it's going to feel very much... I feel like the obvious thing that was foreshadowed, given that they spent a lot of time at the beginning of the season telling us that Book has a connection to Mole, is that Book would have been the one to follow her into the device.
That is a good point. I mean, there's the big portal in space, so they could find a way to send him to their position, I suppose, but you do make a solid point. It seems like they're going to have it be Michael making that connection with her, which is strange.
We've had Michael be the Red Angel, and we've had Michael solve the burn, and we've had Michael at least be an important part of finding Species 10C, and we had Michael deal with all the various elements of season 1. Yes, this is very much the show about Michael Burnham. I feel like with everything that was we learned about Book connection with Mole, and obvious with this season, they tried to get more people from the rest of the ship involved and everything else. I don't know. I do feel a little disappointed that it looks like the final episode is yet again going to be Michael Burnham saves the galaxy. Number 5. I mean,
honestly, I fully expected it, because it is the Michael Burnham show, as much as a lot of people don't like that. I've come to accept it. Just, she is the main character. It is what it is. I like her as a character, so I don't, abhor it the way a lot of people do. But I am hoping she's not the one and only savior to this situation. I would like to see the whole crew come together to somehow make this work. I don't really see how, considering it seems like it's going to end on a very personal note between the two of them, but again, they could surprise us. But again, I've come to just accept it and kind of expect it. I'm not upset about it. Maybe just a tidbit disappointed that it's sort of doing the same thing that we've been doing for a lot of the show. For the most part, I pretty much just enjoyed this one. I found it to be a pretty good episode, just with a very weak setup is all.
So, let us know down in the comments what you thought about this particular episode. Maybe what your thoughts are about where this series is going to conclude and how it's going to end in the final episode next week. Don't forget to also subscribe if you're new to the channel, as it does help the channel grow. And we will see you next week to wrap this all up. But until then, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.